Here.
Zimmerman.
Present.
Mayor Richardson.
Here. Mrs. Waite, would you like to lead us in the pledge?
Certainly.
Please place your hand over your heart. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
City Manager's report.
Just a couple things to report. One, there was a press release that went out this morning about West Nile virus. We have chickens out at our wastewater plant that vector control test regularly, and they did find 4 of them having the West Nile virus. So we would encourage people in Solvang to, wear insect repellent, check their properties for water, and make sure there's no standing water that would promote that. But just take a little extra caution with that discovery. So. And then second, I just want to announce we're partnering with Empower Santa Barbara County. There's going to be a workshop kickoff party on Wednesday, October 18th here in the council chambers from 5:30 to 7:30 to find out about energy upgrades that you could do to your home. And we're trying to get 50 homes in Solvang as a target for that. So that's my report.
Thank you. Next is public communications, written or verbal. At this time, please direct comments to the City Council regarding consent calendar items or matters not on the agenda but within the jurisdiction of the Council. Speakers are limited to 5 minutes. And Lynn Swenson is going to be speaking because of the closed session item, so we're allowing him to come first so they don't have to hang out until we go into closed session. So Lynn, it's your turn.
Council, Mayor, and especially Ms. Karen, do appreciate all of you that are here tonight to address the business of Solvang. I do have a prepared statement for me. The employees, the members of the Teamsters Union have prepared this, and usually I don't come forward and read something verbatim, but they have worked on this and they wanted me to present it to you for consideration in tonight's closed session concerning the impasse procedure and where negotiations are at. My name is Lynn Swenson, and I am the area coordinator for the Teamsters Union in this area. And they write, we understand the City Council will discuss the employees' contract negotiations in closed session tonight. Behind me and in front of you is your team, who is ready, willing to step up to the plate, as they have done throughout this year and for many of them for many years and decades. What is necessary for them to execute your vision, your guidance, and your input for them. They are ready. The rules of the game were not created by these employees or by them, but yet they all are here standing ready to fulfill your vision, to fulfill your needs and bring them about as employees of the city of Solvang. They stand somewhere between the way things used to be and the uncertainty of the future. These are not positions that they play, but they manage to work together, to pick up the slack of unfilled positions and work through complicated regulations. And it's not enough to simply be here to compensate for lack of strategy, but what are their challenges? The cost of living increases each year. The team is understaffed. There are few career paths for them to advance and move forward. The staff feels unsupported by upper management, and they feel that there is a lack of leadership in that area. Now, if you're wondering what the rules are for your line staff, they have brought their playbooks with them. The stack of folders in the front row are all the things that guide them, the regulations that they have to follow, the items that they need to know in order to bring about your vision, the city's vision. Now, what does winning look like to the city? They gave me a list of things. And for them, it's really very simple, but the things they do behind the scenes to bring these things about sometimes are very complicated. Sometimes it involves long hours and them making decisions. Winning is a happy customer. When the citizens of Solvang come in and deal with the city staff and leave happy, they feel that they have won. When downtown is clean, they feel they have won. When they have a successful community event or uninterrupted water and sewer service, they feel they have won. There is a huge magnitude of items that stand behind these things for them to accomplish it. Sometimes to the public it looks very simple. When there's no problems, when there's no issues, when there's nothing broken, the community will look at it and say, must be a pretty easy job because everything is going so smoothly, everything is brought about so well. I do have a list of the employees that are part of the team. Alfredo Torrejo in maintenance, Bridget Elliott, associate engineer, Brenda Macer, assistant planner, Kuku Santana, maintenance worker, Debbie Curtis, reception clerk, Diane Christensen, building technician 1, Frank Pacheco, wastewater, Frank Sanders, engineering technician, Heidi Service, office assistant, James Peterson, water operator, Jeff Morris, Jenny McClurg, senior recreation coordinator, George Garcia, maintenance worker, Julie Glending, finance supervisor, Keith Cole, water supervisor, operator, Kristen Rubin, utility billing, Nathan Giacinto, wastewater. And those last two are the steward and the chief steward with the city. And I know that their names don't get mentioned often, but really many of them are very key with taking your vision and putting it into place. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. My comment is that sounded like a love letter for the city of Solvang. It did. It's a great, I personally treasure these employees. They've all done wonderful work, and I hope we can reach a satisfactory agreement. We want nothing but the best for our guys, you know. Any of you have any comments?
And gals.
Oh, yes. That's guys generic.
Mayor?
Yes, go ahead.
I did not turn over the paper. They noted to me that there's a back page. So
Go right ahead.
My light hasn't changed in. I don't know if the timer
ahead.
started over. Additional employees, Mike Garley, I already mentioned Nathan Giacinto, Nick Rivera, Paul Mastikas, Raymond Cano, Tim Keaty. The issues before you tonight is the cost of living raise. The city has offered 2%. The Teamsters are seeking 3%. We have brokered with the mediator an additional 5% towards a medical premium, an additional $6 on the opt-out money for the city. These items will help the employees support and raise their families. They would love to show what happens out on the playing field, and you're always welcome and encouraged to visit them in the workplace to see what it is that they do and how they do perform these duties. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to comment also that when I do Mayor for a Day and bring city people around to visit each of the departments, every one of them are impressed by our employees. And I see it in action when I bring them around. I really have nothing but pride for the employees in the city. Wonderful people. Does anybody have anything else on this one?
I just want to let them know that I appreciate their comments. I hear you, and we'll see what we can do.
Thank you.
Thank you. Tracy Beard.
Hello, thank you, City Council, and welcome Karen White to the council. October 12th is our mixer for the Solvang Olive Press, 5:30 to 7:30. That's at 465 Ellis Hall Road. October 17th is our Go Green Business Expo at the Cork Hotel, Route 246, from 5 to 8 p.m. We will have cars there, Go Green businesses, everything from inside business to how to make your business green on the big picture. We have over 60 businesses there. We have 4-page ads, so you can see the ad running this week. We did a successful class last week with our contractors, and we're very thankful to Holly's office and the Planning Commission for helping us do that. Our chamber has been asked to be, and today was our first meeting for the Small Business Task Force with Monique Lamone's office. We were the only chamber asked to be on that task force. We have a class running October 26th for business challenges for businesses, and we just want to say in our Scarecrow, we want to keep it fun and keep the community, just keep it fun, our program. And if anybody has any questions of what we're doing, and we really thank the chamber, and we think we're doing a good job with our educational programming this year, and we thank you all very much.
Thank you, Tracy.
Okay.
I have no other speaker slip for public comment. Does anyone else wish to speak at this time? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the council. for council comments and requests. Ms. Jamison, would you like to start?
I'll wait a minute.
Oh, okay.
You get to carry the votes out.
Oh, okay, I guess I can start now.
Yeah.
Okay. Since we have a new person on the council, and welcome Karen, I'm glad you're here.
Thank you.
I think we need to, maybe at our next meeting, go through our committee assignments and see if anybody wants to change, fill in where Hans was. So I think we all need to think about
yeah.
some of those changes. Dave and I attended the memorial service that they had, I think it was Thursday night, for the Las Vegas incident. And it was very solemn, and it was very nice. And there were just a few of us, but you could all tell that we had some sort of connection there, and I'm glad that somebody picked up the ball and did that. And then I attended this permit with all the red binders, the permit course that that California Code Check did. And it was pretty interesting. I sit on the other side. I bring the clients to them. And so sometimes we're like this. We don't always see things exactly the same. But they've always been very courteous. I don't deal with California Code Check here in Solvang. I don't think that would be appropriate. But they are up in, they do the same thing for Santa Barbara County, and that's where I take most of my clients. But I thank Holly and whoever put that together. Diane, thank you.
Chamber of Commerce.
And the Chamber of Commerce, yeah. Thank you very much. It was very worthwhile. And that's all I have.
Mr. Tucson?
No comments tonight.
Ms. Waite?
Yes, this weekend I had relatives and friends from out of town visiting, and we had, done the Solvang tour. We were having lunch and walking down the main avenues here, and on a number of occasions, we were, I wouldn't say accosted, but approached pretty aggressively by what I feel are pop-up vendors. And I don't know if this has come up or how the council or the city addresses this, but they're individuals that get permission from a business owner to stand in front of their store and hand you items such as little packets of makeup or cosmetics or face cream, but they're gone the next day. So this happened several times on Sunday. So I just wanted to bring that to the attention of the council, maybe have a discussion at some point.
We can. There is one new store in town who's doing makeup, and the rule is you can't do it on the public walkway. So as long as they're on property, they can do that. So if they came out, then they're in
Yeah,
violation.
in two different places they were out on the sidewalk.
Okay.
That's my comment.
Mr. Zimmerman?
First of all, I want to say that I value the city employees and their hard work and everything they do the most, and I believe we'll come to a good resolution here with everything there. And I want to welcome Karen to the council.
Thank you.
The comment I have is on the last couple of Sundays in the park. We've had jazz concerts, and it's been well attended, and it's been great music. And I thank the chamber for putting those on. And then of course I've welcomed Ms. Waite several times, and again I'll welcome you. And we're glad to have you aboard. and thank God that's over. Okay. On to correspondence received by City Council. I'm getting email, and I suppose others are, regarding the sphere of influence study that we're doing. There's a move afoot to make sure that we understand the pros and cons of it, and I welcome those emails, by the way, so there's no reason to respond to them except that we are getting those emails.
I'd like to make a comment about actual letters that we receive in our packet. I think they should be acknowledged in that we let the person know that, yes, we did receive their letter. Because I've had people who watch on television, and we just say we've gotten letters, but they don't know if their letter has been received. And they don't want it to be read, they just want to know that, yes, we got their letter.
Okay, then we have received letters from Tom Perkins, and then I personally received and addressed to other council members from Jim Nuttall and Dr. Alan F. and Ramona Pasela.
Yes, we received that.
And I'm getting emails from others too that will come to the fore, I'm sure.
Just as a reminder, sometimes I or the city clerk do not receive those, so they won't make the packet unless one of you forwards them to us. So just a reminder, if you want to keep us in the loop, just pass it on and we'll get it
I
into the
brought
packet.
those to do that, but
Okay.
so I just revealed them, so that's okay. City Council, yes, approval of the agenda. Is anybody wants to make any changes besides me? Yeah. Okay, yeah, we want to move item 12 in the front of item 8, because we're having this, item 11 is going to be a long, drawn-out affair, I think. So if we put the appointment to the Board of Architecture Review in place of item 7, which was the council vacancy. And then I'd like to consider, as we go on through the evening, consider tabling item 11, because it's quite a thick packet and there's quite a lot of information in there. And in reviewing it, I'd like to have some sort of a workshop to tell us more about this, because there's some intricacies in this thing that require some real consideration. There are 12 options in it, and some are kind of confusing and some are consolidated. So as we get toward the end of the evening, if it gets late, I'd like to carry that over to another meeting or to have a workshop with it.
I think their person is here. The person that
Yeah,
did
you
the
have a
study.
representative from Moore and Associates, and also I see a representative from the County of Santa Barbara out there also. So you do have a few people in the audience for that item.
Maybe we hear it out, and then we can always table it for action later after thinking about all the
Well,
options.
we might be able to do that, yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good idea. So if, with those changes, are those changes acceptable?
If that's a motion, I'll second it.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstain? Pass 5-0. Okay. City Council minutes of September 25th, 2017. Are there any additions, corrections, deletions to those minutes? If not, can I have a motion accepting?
I'll make the motion to accept.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? Abstain. Pass 5-0. On to item 6, consent agenda. Does anybody want to pull any consent agenda items? Seeing none, then can I have a motion accepting the consent agenda as presented?
I so move.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
We'll have a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Jameson,
Yes.
Waite,
Yes.
Toussaint,
Yes.
Zimmerman,
Yes.
Mayor Richardson.
Yes, and that passes with a 5-0. On to the regular agenda, item number 12.
Appointment to the Board of Architecture Review.
Staff report?
With the resignation of Carla Deuce and now the appointment of Ms. Waite to the City Council, there are now 2 open seats on the Board of Architecture Review. I have received 2 applications, and those would be Susan Williams and Patrick Kavanaugh. And we would recommend, as I do not have any other applications, that those folks be appointed to the Board of Architecture Review, although they are free to speak if they so choose. And we're just wait for your appointment.
Okay. Is there any question to the staff report?
How is this advertised for?
I advertised in the local paper and also on boards, the City Hall board.
Got it, okay.
Any other questions? Seeing no other questions, we'll go to the public for comment. I have one speaker slip, Susan Williams.
Good evening, Mayor Richardson and City Council. It's nice to see all of you up there this evening. I'm a business owner and a resident of Solvang, as you know. I've been involved for the last 10 years in various aspects of Solvang, and it's very important to me that we keep our look of the Danish architecture, and especially in the TRC and also the residential areas. I think it's important to follow the rules that we have in place, and if there is an issue, then I think that those issues need to be addressed, and sometimes they need to be changed a little bit to go with the times. So I thank you for your consideration. I would very much appreciate your appointing me to the BAR. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. That's the only speaker slip I have on this side. Does anyone else wish to speak?
I could, if you like.
Please, Patrick.
Thank you. I didn't sign up. I didn't know what exactly the procedure was. But I, Mr. Mayor and Council, I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you and present my view, I guess, of the issues before the Board of Architectural Review. You have my resume. I think that was in the materials. I've had a lot of experience in master planning and campus designs and so forth, and I really do appreciate the care and diligence with which the city has developed and applied a cohesive design for the city. I agree with Susan that Solvang's been very successful in maintaining and nurturing those design standards. And coming from a university setting where we recognized how important the design, a unified design standard was for our campus, that's important for this city, and the city's been able to communicate its dedication to its Danish roots that began over 100 years ago. So if I am selected to serve, I'll pledge my best efforts to see that those standards continue to serve the best interests of the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the council for action.
I'd like to make a motion to fill the 2 vacancies on the Board of Architectural Review with Susan Williams and Patrick Kavanaugh as applied.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded.
I have one question.
Yes.
Patrick, how did you hear about the opening, or the application and opening?
Frankly, I've just had an interest. I'm retired now. I've had a life in either public service or not-for-profit, and now after being in town a little over 3 years, or actually almost 5 years we bought here. I retired about 3.5 years ago. I was, looking at the web presence of the city and recognized they had applications. They actually have an open invitation for people to apply for any of the boards there, and I did so. That was
cool.
Was it?
All
Thank
right,
you.
Thanks.
Any other comments? Then would you, we have a motion and a second. Would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Waite,
Yes.
Toussaint,
Yes.
Jameson,
Yes.
Zimmerman,
Yes.
Mayor Richardson.
Yes, and that passes with the 5-0. And congratulations and welcome to your service with the city.
Thank you.
On to item 8.
Item 8, status of Parks and Recreation Commission.
Staff report.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. I'm Fred Lagerman, the Parks and Recreation Director. And tonight's first of my 2 agenda reports is on the status of the Parks and Recreation Commission. And we're looking to discuss and provide staff direction on the possibility of putting our Solvang Parks and Recreation Commission on a hiatus status. The commission is an advisory board to the Solvang City Council. They currently meet on a quarterly basis to address various parks and recreation issues. And until a few years ago, we met with them monthly. However, due to a lack of business items, the meetings were reduced to 4 times per year. The commission was of particular importance when the city was dealing with new and larger projects, such as the construction of Sunnyfields Park and the skate park in Hans Christian Andersen Park. For the last several years, the commission has only met sporadically due to a lack of business matters or the lack of a quorum. And at the end of this year, 2 of our present commissioners will be resigning. This, with the addition of the lack of foreseeable business items, leads staff to consider putting the commission on hiatus until further notice. We discussed this with the commissioners at our last meeting, and they were in favor of this proposal. As for alternatives, we could keep the commission in its current capacity, eliminate the commission, or create an ad hoc Parks and Rec committee to advise the city when we have important subject matters dealing with parks and recreation as they arise. As for a fiscal impact, the commissioners receive a $100 stipend for each meeting they attend, so we would have a minimum of $2,000 saved annually if they were on hiatus. And of course, staff time involved with the commission would be reduced and used elsewhere. And that is it for the staff report. Happy to take any questions.
Any questions of the staff report? Seeing none, thank you, Britt. And now we can go to the public for comment. Is there any public comment? No public comment. We'll bring it back to the dais for action. I have a question. If we eliminate or put the Parks and Rec Commission on hiatus, is it possible for the council to serve in its stead as a Parks and Rec Commission?
Yes, Parks and Rec Commissions are creatures of local rule, not state statute, so you can handle it any way you want to.
So it could become an agenda item. A Parks and Rec issue could become an agenda item on a regular council calendar?
Yes.
Well, so I'd like to offer that as another alternative to the ones presented. So
I think if you put it on hiatus, naturally, that's what would happen. So that's the same as the staff recommendation, really.
You would de facto become the Parks and Rec Commission. Those items would come to the
well,
council.
it was suggested. It was
If you put it on a hiatus and didn't have a rec commission, things that needed to get council action would just come directly to the council. They wouldn't have to go for advice from the rec commission first. We wouldn't refrain from bringing things to the city council that were properly in front of it.
Staff suggested that we could recall them while they're on hiatus on an as ad hoc basis. So is, is there a difference between the two conditions?
Well, yeah, that's what. Well, I think one of staff's alternative suggestion was an ad hoc committee, not a rec.
Yeah. Okay.
Not a recreation commission, but I think the recommendation was just hiatus, meaning don't change the code. Just don't have one for now, and let's see how things work.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Yes, I have a comment. I am in favor of an ad hoc committee for the Parks and Recreation. I think that would be the best way to deal with it in the short term.
An ad hoc committee made of?
So 2 council members?
Council members?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're using the words ad hoc committee, and if an ad hoc committee has a temporary life, as in it's only going to last a specified amount of time or until a specified function is accomplished, then it's a true ad hoc committee. If it's an officially appointed committee of 2 with standing jurisdiction, then it's a standing committee and it'll have to follow the Brown Act. So, I mean, I'm just making sure you know what your options are.
Yeah.
So just a thought, we're going to be bringing back potential assignments to committees next meeting. We could at that point because it really wasn't agendized as a council ad hoc subcommittee, we could bring that as one of the options to create that ad hoc committee, give it a duration of 12 months. It would meet the rule of the law for an ad hoc, and then you could have that, establish that with 2 council members.
What is your feeling on that idea?
I think I'd like to see it considered in the, when we come back and kind of reassign the committees here.
I like staff recommendation, hiatus. And I'd make a motion to go with staff recommendation.
Is there a second to that motion?
Okay, there were a couple of staff recommendations. What are we going with?
Hiatus one is what he's.
Hiatus?
I'll make a substitute motion. We bring this back for consideration on the, when we do the committees.
I'll second that.
Okay. And then the substitute motion gets acted on first. Can I have a roll call vote on the substitute motion?
Councilmember Toussaint,
Yes.
Waite,
Yes.
Jameson,
Yes.
Zimmerman,
No.
Mayor Richardson.
Yes. That passes with a 4-1. And that's the end of that item. Item next.
Item 9, Hans Christian Andersen Park Restroom Upgrade, bid
Staff-
review.
Staff report?
Good evening again. This has quite a few numbers in here, so I will be reading it somewhat verbatim to make sure that the public understands the various numbers that we'll be addressing, especially costs. So staff's recommendation is to review the bid proposals for the Hans Christian Andersen Park ADA restroom remodel project and determine whether to award or reject the bids and thus how to move forward. As for background, the 2 restrooms down at the park, Hans Christian Andersen Park, were built in the early 70s and 80s respectively. The City of Solvang is currently trying to bring them both into ADA compliance. We initially went out to bid on this project more than 2 years ago without engineering drawings, and only 1 contractor would bid the project. Following that, we did research on the plausibility of installing a prefabricated restroom building, but the costs were higher than our budget at that time. It was then decided to hire a draftsman to create the current drawings for the restroom remodel, and the project was put out to a formal bid this summer with an original engineer's estimate for the project of $110,000. It is noted in the project manual notice that the ADA restroom remodel project includes the remodel of existing restroom buildings, both the north and the south, that's the one by the skate park and the other by the tennis courts, to all ADA requirements. And that includes removing and replacing toilets, sinks, bathroom fixtures, making sure all the codes are followed. It also includes necessary plumbing, painting the restroom's interior, some electrical work, replacing venting material, and a complete redo of the outside concrete as necessary to conform with ADA requirements, as well as recoating the existing floors and walls. Park staff widely advertised this project to solicit bids from local contractors and our plan holders list. Only 3 bids were received for this project, which were publicly open on Friday, September 1. The 3 bid proposals are indicated in the summary. They are J&P Construction with a low bid of $213,000, Elliott and Poles Construction with a bid of $244,000, and Quincon Incorporated out of Grover Beach with a bid of $357,000. The bid for these services is far over our amount budgeted for the completion of the remodel project, and after the expense of our current engineering drawings, we now only have $98,500 in the line item budget. So several alternatives after discussing with staff and the city manager. 5 alternatives that we are including here are: number 1, to reject the current bids. 2 is approve a budget adjustment to use general fund reserves and award to the lowest bidder. Number 3 is to reduce the scope of work to decrease our overall costs. 4 would be to remodel just 1 restroom at this time and budget to remodel the other bathroom in a future fiscal year. Or 5, to revisit the prefab restroom concept, with each restroom estimated at a cost of between $125,000 to $150,000. Of course, you may elect any one of these possibilities or offer other potential solutions. As for fiscal impact, with the original budget set of $110,000 and a remaining budget of only $98,500, using the lowest bid as a baseline, we're still short by about $115,000. So if we were to reward the lowest bidder, the necessary funding could come from the general fund. With an additional 10% contingency, we would need a grand total of about $136,000 to move forward. And that is it. And I have to answer any
Question of the
questions.
staff report. Sweet.
Yeah, I have a question. So the bids from the three construction companies, do those included, is that a total for both of the bathrooms?
Yes, they are.
Okay, as opposed to 150-some thousand
For one
per-
prefab, correct.
per prefab? Okay, thank you.
Yes.
How was the engineer so far off in his price estimate?
It was done in-house, so I don't know for certain. I certainly can claim some green responsibility, being the first time doing this large of a project, and did not foresee the cost being so heavy.
Well, what's the square footage?
Restroom, the larger restroom by the skate park, I believe was 24 by about 12 to 14. That's per side, per women's and men's. And the other one was about 2/3 that size.
Okay.
Fred, did you get any individual costs for each restroom separately?
As far as bidding out stuff,
Yeah.
yes, in the actual full bid proposal, they list what their contractor or general is going to be spending, what the painter is going to be spending, what the plumber is going to be
No,
spending.
I mean for each individual restroom.
Yes.
Okay, do you have
Yeah.
that, do you have that number at the top of your head, what those two numbers are?
I don't. It's in the official bid package document.
Because it would be interesting to know if the 98,000 would cover either one of those bathrooms by itself.
It was close to the tennis court restroom, I believe, because that restroom is considerably smaller. It's only 2 stalls each.
By close, do you mean off by 10 grand or ahead, is there any, we'd like to make a decision, and this could be a possibility, is to pick and upgrade one restroom now and another one later.
Based off the 213 bid of J&P Construction being the lowest bid, and the other two, I would say at least 60%, if not more, of the cost of their estimation were going towards the larger of the 2 restrooms, the one at the skate park. So with that number, with that percentage, that 213, the small restroom could fall in that 100 to 110 range.
And if it doesn't, then we'll have to come back and allocate more money out of the general fund to finance that, right? I'm sure.
I got a question on the prefabs. Are those the exact same size, or is there a reduced size, and how would that work? Is it like a tear down and then drop a new?
It is a tear down.
Mm.
We would keep the existing
Slab.
concrete. Yeah, we'd keep the slab except for the tennis court restroom, which has a different shape than the prefabs that we've investigated thus far. And it's pretty much completely bulldoze what we have and start over. But as far as the size, the restroom that we would be replacing at the skate park would be more than the 150 because that's considerably larger. The 125 to 150 is to replace the tennis court size, 2 stalls each.
Okay.
I guess my issue would be doing only one restroom. How would we decide which one to do? So I think that we really need to do both at the same time.
Well, my feeling is that we don't know the cost of individual restrooms. I'm not prepared to double the size of the, to equal the bid coming out of general funds at this time. Okay. So, and if I knew the costs of one or the other, and it's a couple $1,000s plus or minus to get one or the other of them built, I would suggest we go that way. But we don't know the numbers.
I don't have them in front. I know
Yeah,
we would be close
to pick
on the
one
top
to
one.
pick one or the other restroom. So
Let's table this and bring it back at the next meeting.
exactly, that's what I was thinking. I'd like to table this item until next council meeting, is when we have those numbers, and then we can make that decision.
Would you like like us to get any other additional information or just the bids on those two?
Well,
The
if it's,
prefab, you want some more information on the prefabs?
I kind of
or-
want to know like exactly
Square
what will be
footages.
done, square footage, and then what will be done on a remodel. Like, what does that consist of? Are we ripping off drywall and down to the studs?
Yes,
and-
so it's not that's a good point, because you're still gonna have a 1980s circa
1970s,
building.
80s building.
Circa building that's now gonna have ADA upgrades, where if you
Right.
do the tear down and put a prefab in, it's a brand new structure. So there is some of that, and we can give you a little more detail on that when we come back.
All right.
yeah, if you could get us all those numbers so we can,
And so, Mayor, you were asking for
I was
the
asking-
breakdown per restroom.
per restroom, right, separately. You know, if it's a few $1,000s coming out of the general fund, that's okay, but in the matter of 100,000, that's not okay, so, in my mind. Any other discussion?
How many restrooms are there in the park?
Well, there's
Restroom
two restroom
buildings.
buildings,
And that's what we're talking about right
That's
now,
correct.
both of those buildings.
correct.
So there's no other restroom.
Correct.
So since we're going to table this, do I need to go to the public? Yes, I have no, thank you,
It's a
Fred.
good idea, though technically, legally, all you have to do is allow public comment before you take action.
Yeah.
So the legal answer is no, but
Oh,
Who wants to say that?
as a courtesy.
Yeah.
Thank you, Fred.
Thank you.
Is there anyone in the audience, I have no speaker slips, anyone wish to comment on this item? Sheila?
Hi, Sheila Benedict. My question is, if you split this, my husband was a contractor. If you split this, you may not get, sometimes when they do them both, there's a little bit of a savings. If you split this, you may wind up paying a lot more money for the second restroom when it's time to do it, because the whole idea is that they get to do the whole job at one
Sure.
time.
Thank you. Any other comments? Seeing none, we'll come back to the council for action, which was table. Till next meeting. Item number 10.
Item 10, additional traffic enforcement options.
Staff report.
Mr. Mayor and members of the council, at a recent city council meeting, a request was made for staff to bring back a report on possible options for additional traffic control within the city of Solvang. Currently, traffic enforcement is done on a limited basis with one deputy assigned to the city of Solvang as part of our law enforcement contract service with the county. We essentially pay for 7.2 full-time equivalents, which is shown in the staff report, and that relates to technically one deputy available to perform duties 24 hours per day, 7 days a week, and the office support personnel in the Solvang substation. Due to the sheriff performing contract law enforcement duties in Buellton, on the Shumash Reservation, and the unincorporated areas of northern Santa Barbara County, particularly in San Ynez and Los Olivos, it does result in a shared law enforcement resource for all these areas when you look at the combined area. The one on-duty deputy is responsible for taking all calls for service, any traffic enforcement, and any additional patrols that are needed. As a side note, the city of Solvang also funds a community resource deputy position through the sheriff's department, and this is separately from our annual service agreement. This position is funded through a combination of a pass-through of the city's annual Citizens Options for Public Safety, or COPS grant of $100,000, and the city's general fund. That was their background. So currently, staff utilizes a variety of resources when it receives complaints from residents regarding traffic concerns. The first basic option is to put the city's changeable message sign out in that location with a speed-related message. Secondly, the staff will request additional presence or law enforcement from the sheriff's department. This is greatly affected by other activities necessary for the deputy on duty to be handling. In some instances, the city has cooperated with the city of Buellton and utilized their motorcycle unit to perform speed enforcement in the city of Solvang. Additionally, regulatory and advisory signage is another method used by the city. In the past, the city has installed solar-powered speed sign indicators at two locations, one on Viborg Road and one on North Alisal Road. Staff has also just recently ordered an additional one to be put on Chalk Hill Road near Solvang Cemetery, and this was in response to the additional traffic that's been generated by the Skip Mesa development. Just as a side note, traffic control devices, stop signs should not be used for stop for speed control. Installation of additional traffic control devices like stop signs should only be done in areas where traffic study has been performed with results that determine the need. Particularly with stop signs, warrant must be met for installation. National standards have been established for the installation of stop signs. Unwarranted stop signs create unnecessarily increased congestion, fuel consumption, and noise and air pollution. They also contribute to the disrespect of stop sign and promote rolling stops. Just a little background on speed humps. The city does have a speed hump policy, and this was put in place after speed humps were installed on 5th Street from Mission Drive to Laurel and on Eucalyptus from Laurel to Atterdag in 2002 as a demonstration project. The city did adopt that policy then in August of 2003, and this policy sets a process for a neighborhood to seek speed bumps. Probably should be noted that no additional speed humps have been put in since that policy has been in effect. The staff feels that the best methodology to affect driver behavior is enforcement. In response to a higher level of citizen concerns throughout the city, Solvang staff has ordered a new radar gun to be utilized for speed enforcement. For a citation to be valid, the recorded speed must be done with a calibrated radar gun and operated by a person that is trained to use the device. Currently, there are only a few deputies trained to utilize the radar gun. There will be another training available in November where additional sheriff patrol can be trained. The city could fund a new position assigned to just traffic enforcement, or utilize additional overtime to perform traffic enforcement, or reduce the community activities of the CRD by reassigning some of this time to traffic enforcement. Just to note, overtime rates, if you were to choose to just use overtime, a sergeant we paid $71.20 an hour. For a senior deputy, it's $62.59, and a deputy sheriff comes in at $59.49, and those are loaded rates through the county's business office. So I've listed the alternatives. One would be to add a motor unit to the city's agreement with the sheriff's department, and that's similar to what the city of Buellton has. That's a relatively pricey alternative. If you look in the cost fiscal analysis, I think it's about $230,000 for that particular option. Option 2 would be to fund additional overtime to perform traffic enforcement at peak times. Obviously, the amount of enforcement needed to affect the residents' perception of traffic violations would vary depending on who you talk to. The fiscal impact section includes a potential for assigning someone, for example, 4 hours a week every week for 52 weeks. And I think the cost of that was about $12,000 to $14,000 a year annually. The third was to revise the activity focus of the community resource deputy position to do traffic enforcement. This option would be a no-cost alternative, but would result in the reduction of the time the CRD spends doing community activities. And obviously, as a community resource deputy, to put him then in an enforcement role kind of contradicts the purpose of a community resource deputy. And then 4 would be to continue with the current operations of using personnel intermittently when they're available for doing traffic enforcement. So that's a summary of your potential options. I'm available for questions, and Lieutenant O'Grady's also in the audience for any questions that may be more law enforcement oriented.
Questions of staff report?
I have a question. When you say that the fully loaded motor unit would have an annual cost of $230,000, are you referring to a car, or are you referring to the $33,000 in addition $33,000 for a motorcycle? So the motor unit, you referring to the motorcycle unit?
That is the personnel plus with an annual replacement cost of the motor included. I think Sean can.
Okay, so it's not a car. That refers to the motorcycle.
On a motor. Yeah.
Okay.
Any other discussion? Questions?
I have a question. Recently, I became aware of an accident that happened on 246, and a 911 call went out, and eventually a sheriff's deputy did come, but he said it was the responsibility of the highway patrol, and so he left. There was no injury to the accident, but there was probably more than $24,000 worth of damage. And I understand that if it's more than 1,000, there has to be some kind of accident report for insurance purposes. So I'm just curious as to who does what on 246?
Mayor Richardson and ladies and gentlemen of the council, Lieutenant O'Grady, I'm the Chief of Police of Solvang. I don't know what you're talking about in terms of what event that was. Do you know where the event happened?
Yes, it happened on 246, where the cutout, the illegal cutout is to go down to the trails. You know, it's like near,
So coming down the 246?
It's about a half mile from outside the city limits.
Okay.
Right.
Because the city limits end.
I understand
right
that.
at, was it?
The bridge.
High Meadow Street.
Right.
After that is the CHP's jurisdiction.
Okay, so it is, but aren't there sheriff's deputies that patrol unincorporated areas?
Yes, that's correct.
So wouldn't they maybe have,
They would go for injuries, but the actual.
It's for injuries.
Yeah, the actual investigation itself is the Highway Patrol's original jurisdiction.
okay.
Just as if it happened to the city, the highway patrolman might be driving by and might stop to render aid for injuries, but
Right.
the actual traffic collision investigation would be our jurisdiction, our original jurisdiction, the Sheriff's Department.
Okay, so when this party was in this accident and they had to physically go to the highway patrol office to get a accident report written up, that's not standard, right? The highway patrol should have come and written the accident report up where the accident happened.
I can't really answer what.
Okay,
Not necessarily. I mean, if it's just damage to a vehicle, and there's no injury, some departments want you to go in and make traffic reports
Okay.
over the counter. It's what they would call
Okay.
it. You go in and
Okay.
talk to an officer because there's a non-injury. It's not an injury accident. Okay. It depends on what their calls for service are like. Are they busy? Are they not busy? And non-injury traffic collisions are, as long as they're not blocking and there's not a hazard.
well, there was debris, there were boulders all over 246.
Okay, I don't know what to tell you on that.
I don't either.
It is quite common to do over-the-counter traffic collision reports. We
Okay.
do them ourselves.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions? The staff report.
Can I just confirm that alternatives 3 and 4 would have the least fiscal impact?
Yes, those would actually have probably no cost. I don't think there'd be a cost to have Charlie trained on the radar, would there?
No, the cost for Charlie would be just paid for by the city as a normal workday.
Has Charlie been trained on that radar?
He has not.
Thank you. Any other questions? Then we go to the audience for the public for comment. Is there anybody who wishes to comment on this item? I have no speaker slips. Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the council for action. Who would like to start? Mr. Zimmerman.
I'll start. So on Alamo Pintado, there's a big sign that says slow down, and truly I think that helps. So sometimes I may be driving a little bit faster than the speed limit, but not know it, like just kind of, not paying attention to like the exact speed because you're kind of just going with the flow. And it actually does help me to go, oh, hey, slow down in this area. So it is a good, I think, mechanism for that kind of like, because now I naturally just slow down because I'm expecting to see that sign that says slow down. And if we had some kind of maybe like divert resources when available with the radar gun, if we really thought that was necessary to enforce that's not just a sign, I think there's value there. But I think just a simple sign like with the LED thing or the solar panel, I don't know, cheap, and then we can potentially maneuver around the city if we needed to, just have a mobile unit where we're getting complaints.
Yeah, the one that you're talking about in Alamo Potato is a mobile one. We do move that around, and that, as I said, that's usually our first line of defense. There's several areas that we move that around to within the city. Charlie does set that. So you could purchase another one of those, and then you would have two available to do them in multiple locations. I think they run about 25,000, I think, for one of those changeable ones. And you can get them with a radar indicator also.
So are we talking about multiple locations where these occurrences are, or is it one specific?
There's several locations in town that we receive speed complaints on, I would.
And is it like a certain time of day? Because habit?
Some people will pinpoint a time, some think it's all day. I mean, it's all perception of that
Gotcha.
person.
Any other questions or comments? Ms. Waite?
So I'm looking at the community resource deputy, and I see that the salary is partially funded through a grant in our general fund. So how much of our general fund do we pay?
I think last year it was about 33,000.
I can tell you.
Okay. I like the idea of adding the advisory signage, using that mobile signage, because I think that's quite effective. If you approach a sign and it says you know you're going 45 or slow down, I think that's very effective. And since it's mobile, it gives us an opportunity to move it around and figure out where it's most effective.
Yeah, on that, does it hold the data on how many cars are passing and what the rate of speed?
The current one we have does not do radar. So we would need to purchase one that does radar. The signs that we have, the two permanent signs, I don't believe they record data on that. But those were actually purchased in, gosh, before I even got here. So I would assume technology now, there may be a better way to record that information.
Yeah, that'd be good to have. Or
They don't record it, but they let you know when you're going too fast.
Oh, yes. You must go too fast.
Yes, I do. And it gets you if you're going, it's a 30 mile an hour zone, it's 31 or 32, and they get you. Yeah.
You know, God bless him, Charlie does a great job, but I think that there's a few hours a week where he could handle a radar gun, you know, that might be appropriate for him to do to cover at least part of our problem. A couple hours a day or a couple hours a week or something like that to let the public know that there's an officer out there ready to enforce the law. Even though he is a community resources officer, that could be considered, come under that giant umbrella of that also. So I would like to see some sort of an agreement on allowing Charlie to get the radar training and step up enforcement with that.
I agree with that, but I'd also like to have another mobile sign.
Okay. A mobile sign with radar, or just one that blinks slow down?
I don't know, I guess I'd want to know the cost of them.
Yeah, we can bring that back. I think it would be beneficial to have one with signage. Obviously, it's when you see your speed, it tends to make you think more than just slow down ahead.
Right.
Slow down.
Okay. Can I have a motion indicating that we can use a community resource officer as a motor vehicle enforcement?
So I guess I'll make the motion to do the blend of some additional resources by the CRD and then a mobile sign.
and on the mobile sign, do we want to just move forward with it on cost? I'd like for it to collect the data and know, like time of day.
Let me see if that's available. So we'll bring back, that really isn't on here as an option, so I'd have to bring that back to get your approval to purchase that and
So we'll move forward with this, and then you'll bring back the cost.
Yeah,
And we can pick
yeah.
what.
So we won't need to have the sign in the motion, it's just direction.
Yeah,
that
you can direct me to bring back information on and a sign and see what kind of feedback information.
So would you adjust your motion for that?
All right, so I'll make the motion to increase resources by the CRD and to bring back options for a mobile sign.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded.
Double
Who
seconded.
seconded it? Okay.
Neil.
Second, third.
Neil.
Oh, geez, I wonder how the vote's going to come out. Would you call the roll, please? It's been moved and seconded.
Councilmember Toussaint,
Yes.
Zimmerman,
Yes.
Jamison,
Yes.
Wait,
Yes.
Mayor Richardson.
Yes, and that passes with a 5-0. Thank you very much. Well, we got plenty of time to take on the short-range transit plan update. Yeah, let's take a break, be back at 20 to 8, 10 minutes.
All right, well, good evening again, Mayor Richardson, council members, Matt Vanderlinden, your Public Works Director and City Engineer. And it's my pleasure to be presenting with you this evening with our consultant, Kathy Chambers with Moore Associates. And also here, as the city manager mentioned, is Matt Daubertine with Santa Barbara County Public Works. Matt is the manager of all the transit activities of Santa Barbara County. So we invited the city of Buellton. Apparently they were not inclined to attend this evening. But the county and the city of Buellton are our partners in funding and running the San Ynez Valley Transit. So one of the requirements that we have to maintain our federal and state funding is to, on a 5-year schedule, update or prepare a new short-range transit plan. And the purpose of the plan is basically to make sure that we're doing all that we can to provide the best transit service to our community, and also to make sure that we are running the transit system in the most efficient way possible, and therefore utilize the least amount of government subsidy in operating the service. So with this short-range transit plan, as you mentioned, Mayor Richardson, we wanted to look at all possible alternatives and really beat all the bushes, and we did extensive outreach. I think we received over 500 surveys back. For a small community, that's good results. We interviewed the drivers, we interviewed the managers of the Solvang Senior Center and the Buellton Senior Center. We reached out to many different nonprofit organizations in the community and tried to do really as extensive surveying and research as we could, so that the information we're bringing to you tonight would be the best possible information to help you make the best possible decisions for the future of the San Ynez Valley Transit. So with that, we have prepared a little PowerPoint presentation that kind of summarizes the staff report, and so I'll turn it over to Kathy Chambers for that, and then I'll have just a few words once she finishes.
Oh, there we go. All right, thank you. Good evening, Mayor Richardson and members of the council. As Matt mentioned, my name is Kathy Chambers. I'm with Moore & Associates. Our firm was engaged by the city to prepare its short-range transit plan for SYVT, so I'm here today to give you the results of and recommendations arising from that planning process. So we had 3 primary goals in developing this short-range transit plan. One was to reduce the overall operating cost of SYVT so as to preserve the city's reserve fund. The second was to increase farebox recovery and improve the farebox recovery ratio so as to maintain compliance with the state's Transportation Development Act. And then the third was to ensure program sustainability. So the SYVT service area covers Solvang, Buellton, and adjacent areas of unincorporated Santa Barbara County. The system currently operates along 2 alignments, with dial-a-ride service provided within 3/4 of a mile of these fixed-route alignments for seniors and persons with disabilities. And we have a general public dial-a-ride service that's provided on Sundays. The primary challenges faced by SYVT across recent years have had a direct bearing on the solutions that were included in the SRTP. A trend of increasing costs across the transit industry as a whole was borne out in SYVT's new operations contract, which went into effect in July 2016. This has been accompanied by a decrease in transit ridership and a decrease in fare revenue, which are also part of a nationwide trend. As you can see, SYVT's annual ridership has decreased across recent years, while operating cost per hour has generally increased. Some contributors to the decrease in ridership include lower gas prices and changes in traditional employment patterns, as well as lower unemployment. So to ensure the plan effectively reflected the community's needs and priorities, as Matt mentioned, we conducted significant public outreach, including surveys, roundtables, and meetings with the MOU partners. These outreach activities resulted in feedback from nearly 650 individuals and organizations from throughout the Santa Ynez Valley. A comprehensive look at system performance showed us where current SYVT customers are boarding. More than 70% of boardings occur in Buellton and or Solvang, while fewer than 9% are in Los Olivos. That shows there's a lot of the ridership is happening along that Highway 246 corridor. Of the 5 bus stops with the highest activity levels, we had 1 in Solvang, 2 in Buellton, and 2 in Santa Ynez. So taking into account the service evaluation, public engagement, and goals of this project, we developed 12 service scenarios. 6 focused on reducing cost by reducing the level of service, 1 focused on reallocating service while maintaining the same number of vehicle service hours, 2 looked at increasing ridership by the introduction of express service between Buellton and Solvang, and 3 considered contracting out some or all of SYVT's services. Once the scenarios were developed, each was evaluated against 3 key criteria. Is the operating cost within the existing transit budget? Will the scenario increase ridership? And is this scenario an attractive alternative? Ultimately, the MOU partners narrowed the recommendations down to 3. One of the options met all 3 criteria. The other 2 recommendations focused on lowering the operating cost but did not necessarily address the other criteria. However, the impact on operating cost made them worth considering. And so we'll go over the 3 recommended scenarios. So option 1, this would provide express service linking Buellton, Solvang, and Santa Ynez while maintaining limited service to Los Olivos. So more frequent service along the Highway 246 corridor is expected to increase ridership. This increased ridership is expected to result in increased farebox revenue, which would help SYVT meet the TDA minimum farebox recovery. Additional locally generated funds, such as the sale of surplus vehicles, the Greater Measure A contribution, and or other local funds would still be required in order to achieve the 10% farebox recovery ratio that's required by the TDA. In option 2, we would maintain current weekday service levels, but Saturday service would be converted to a general public dial-a-ride. This would be very similar to what's currently being provided on Sunday, but it would be a longer service day on Saturday, so 2 buses would operate across a 10-hour service day. Even though this recommendation only affects 1 day, it does reduce the overall operating cost. In addition, it would also only affect Saturday riders. However, we would expect a decline in Saturday ridership as a result of this recommendation. As with option 1, additional locally generated funds would still be required in order to achieve the 10% farebox recovery ratio.
Can I ask a question at this point?
Yes.
The dial-a-ride service now requires a 24-hour advance notice.
Mm-hmm.
Will that continue with the Saturday and Sunday services then for the general public, or can they call on the time they want to use it?
That was not something we addressed in this report. That's certainly something that could be addressed as part of the service
Matt?
configuration. Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean
No,
to interrupt
go
you.
ahead.
Yeah, that detail hasn't been looked at, but most likely we would continue the policy of requiring a 24-hour reservation. However, even now, if there's a time slot open, someone can call, you know, at the last minute and see if there's an opening. And if there is, the bus will, the customer service representative will try to accommodate them.
I guess I don't understand the open thing. Is there a scheduled time when they take the dial-a-rides with the advance notice? Is that what it is?
Well, what happens is they basically take reservations. So imagine like a restaurant or whatever, they're taking reservations and they fill up, but from day to day and week to week, those reservations may change. So, so if a time slot is full, like when you call a restaurant for a reservation, you want a table at 7, if all the tables are full, they'll tell you, well, we can take you at 5:30 or 8:30. And so you have the option to select a different time. Also, it just might be on that day of the week, you call at the last minute, you know, or 2 hours ahead or whatever, and they might have had somebody cancel, or just aren't busy that day, and they'll say, yeah, we can fit you in.
So the dispatch basically like on the hour or the half hour for those dial-a-ride services then?
Correct,
Okay,
correct,
okay.
yeah. They have a 30-minute schedule, and they try to fill all those.
Okay.
slots.
Thank you.
All right, the third option would convert the entire program to a general public dial-a-ride. While this option would not present an attractive mobility alternative for many people, it is included because it offers the greatest reduction in operating cost. Dial-a-ride, while providing curb-to-curb service, is inherently more difficult to use, especially for a casual rider who may have other mobility options. However, it would be expected to achieve the 10% fare box recovery ratio without the addition of locally generated funds. So given the feedback from the community and the MOU partners, we also looked at some blended scenarios which pair option 1 with 2 other alternatives. So option 1A would build on option 1, the express service along the Highway 246 corridor with reduced service to Los Olivos, and it would also introduce the Saturday general public dial-a-ride as discussed in option 2. By pairing these scenarios, SYVT would be expected to achieve the 10% fare box recovery ratio for each of the next 5 years. Revenues from the sale of surplus transit vehicles would be counted as locally generated funds, but no other contributions are expected to be required. Option 1B would provide express service along the Highway 246 corridor, reduce service to Los Olivos, and provide dial-a-ride service for seniors through contracting with a local taxi company, Uber or Lyft. Programs such as this have been highly successful in other locations. SYVT would continue to provide dial-a-ride service as required under the Americans with Disabilities Act to persons with disabilities. This would reduce the overall cost of dial-a-ride service, allowing SYVT to contract out for senior trips at a much lower rate. However, we would recommend phasing in the senior program 6 months to a year after the initial service change, which would allow ample time for program development and customer training on how to use the new program. Again, pairing these scenarios would help SYVT achieve the 10% fare box recovery ratio for each of the next 5 years, and revenues from the sale of surplus vehicles would be counted, but no other contributions would be expected to be required. So the partner recommendations also included 2 additional revenue-enhancing options. The first is a hotel partner pass-through program. As envisioned, this would provide additional revenue through a 25 to 50 cent per night fee for hotel guests. It's anticipated that this program could, in its first year, generate $34,000 or more. This revenue can be counted as locally generated revenue with respect to fare box recovery, and it would eliminate the need for additional contributions from other sources. As this would be an ongoing revenue source, it could also support more robust transit development in the future. The other revenue-enhancing recommendation is a fare increase. A comparison of SYVT's current fares with other transit fares in the region leads us to conclude that a fare increase should not be considered until after the selected scenario has been in place for at least 6 months. Doing so would allow the selected scenario to settle in and not impose a fare increase if one wasn't actually needed. So, as shown in the staff report, each of these scenarios reduces the operating cost to varying degrees, and this chart compares the impact of each scenario. Thank you for the opportunity to present this information. I'll do my best to answer any questions the council may have.
Can you go back to that last slide?
Perfect.
This one?
Okay. All right.
So one thing to one thing to clarify is basically with the contractual operation cost increases and the reduction in ridership, we're basically running at approximately a $50,000 a year deficit. So we have built up over the last several years a really nice reserve for the Santa Ynez Valley Transit. I think it's around 400,000. So and we would want to maintain, you know, at least about 150 to 200,000 reserve, in case a bus breaks down unexpectedly or some major thing like that. But you can see in just a few years, if we continue running at a $50,000 a year deficit, we would dwindle down the reserve. And we're also trying to increase ridership. We're trying to kind of stay modern and stay with the needs of the community, thus the extensive survey and everything. But so this evening we would like you to consider really 3 decisions. One thing, in order to satisfy the federal and state requirements, we would like the City Council to just accept the updated short-range 2017 short-range transit plan. But in addition, there's the operations option or scenario. We would like the City Council to give us direction on that. The 3 SYVT partners, we really lean towards option 1B. And I don't know if it was made totally clear, but the idea with option 1 is to provide basically express service along the Highway 246 Mission Drive corridor between Buellton, Solvang, and San Ynez, which is where, you know, the majority of the passengers board and where they want to go. And then at key points, time points during the day, we'd have one of the buses would branch off and go to Los Olivos for a morning trip, a midday trip, and an afternoon or evening trip. But so that's option 1. And then as far as 1B, we'd recommend implementing that express service first, and then phasing in the second half of that with the transportation network companies. So as you may be aware, you know, Uber and Lyft, they're growing like skyrocket, the use. And so we anticipate really at some point the need to partner with those type of companies. There was a presentation at the Santa Barbara County Transit Advisory Committee about emerging technologies in transportation and automated vehicles and all these kind of things. And there's several major car manufacturers. General Motors just announced in the last 2 weeks that I think it's by 2025 or 2030 that all of their vehicles be autonomous vehicles. I mean electric vehicles. And there's the autonomous vehicles. So we're trying to take steps kind of in that direction, or that's what we're recommending. And right now, to provide a ride on our dial ride service, it costs about $24 to $25 to go and pick someone up at their home and take them anywhere in the San Ynez Valley they want to go. So an Uber or Lyft ride is about $14, and so the concept would be we would contract with these companies. The San Ynez Valley Transit dollar ride customers would still pay that $1.75 that they're used to paying. San Ynez Valley Transit would pay the other $12. And so instead of paying $25 for a trip, now we're only paying $12 for a trip. And so it would save tremendously. That would also help promote, you know, private business and more jobs and things like that. And of course, as Kathy mentioned, we would still have to provide the dollar ride service for disabled residents and passengers. So we would have a bus with the wheelchair lift, and to be able to provide the full ADA paratransit service to any disabled person in San Ynez Valley. So the transit would be the fixed route with service, dollar ride service just for the disabled, and then contracting with these other transportation network companies.
Any questions?
Yeah, so contracting with the other companies, is it falling under the same guidelines as if they were ADA, or can it be anybody to just call up a dial-a-ride and use it? Does it fall under the same guidelines as that?
Well, it's fairly new. There's a few cities in California that are in the process of implementing it. Laguna Beach is one of the cities that's contracting with Uber right now. So we would basically implement this, like Kathy mentioned, over the next 6 to 12 months, so we'd have to research it a little bit further. But basically, we would have a contract in place with them, and we'd have some type of pass that we would sell the.
Well, they make like a profile. I can make a profile on Uber or Lyft, and so I guess my point is they'll, to qualify for that dial a ride and that like substituting the cost or whatever.
Right.
Would be that they're a senior.
Correct. 60 years or over.
Okay, and we'll have that profile and make sure that it's actually the person that's taking the ride and using it.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. So yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't really understand your question at first. So right now, what we do is anyone that wants to use the dial ride service, they have to register. They have to fill out an application that gets reviewed to confirm, that they're over 60 or they are truly disabled. And we have a list of all the registered riders or passengers that are allowed to use the service. So, and it's open to anybody over 60. So, main purpose of the application is just as verification step, and then they get on the list and they can purchase some type of pass or whatever, and then the Uber driver would submit those back to the city for reimbursement. So the exact way the contract will work, we haven't worked on the details of that yet, but. So that would be the second decision we need. And as far as the fare increase or the hotel partner pass-through program, as Kathy mentioned, we'd like to implement some of these other changes first and then see how that works out before we decide if a fare increase is needed, and also the hotel partner pass-through program as well. So and I don't know if it was clear on the hotel partner pass-through program, it would cost the hotels and the residents of San Ynez Valley nothing. The guests would pay, for example, 50 cents per night for their stay, per room, and they'd also, as a benefit, they would have free use of the San Ynez Valley Transit while they're here staying. And then that money would basically be forwarded to San Ynez Valley Transit to help basically subsidize the transit service.
Have you gotten any pushback from the Hotel Association regarding adding another daily fee on the hotel bill?
Well, that's a really good question, and we haven't even gone to that step yet because we didn't know if you would like the idea or not. So
I see them as giving a big pushback because they would want to increase their per daily rate too,
Well,
sure.
And 50 cents really is a big change for what they're receiving. So
would the transit be able to facilitate, if it's free rides and let's say tourists are going to use it, can they facilitate potentially increased usage if someone actually wanted to?
Oh yeah.
Like
yeah.
all of a sudden now you got hundreds of people
Yeah, so
wanting to jump around the valley?
Yeah, sure. That's a really good question. But we were, just a few years ago when we were giving the peak number of ridership, we were over 50,000 passengers per year, and we're now down to 40,000. So just right there we've got, and even at 50,000, we had a lot of surplus room available. So yeah, so we have the ability, just with the vehicles we have right today, to accommodate many, many more passengers. Yeah.
So are you making a differentiation between Americans with disabilities, that class, versus senior?
Correct.
Okay, so
Yeah.
then with the option 1B, ADA would be the dial-a-ride, and then senior citizens, which you consider over 60,
Yeah, 60 and over.
would be, you'd slowly work on transitioning them possibly to another company to work with the city, and
Correct.
then eliminate the dial-a-ride for them altogether.
Correct.
And then add in all of the express services from Buellton through Solvang to San Ynez, and then do fixed routes as well.
Well, the express service is the fixed route.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay,
it's
okay.
synonymous.
So, okay, so it's, okay, all right, so, but limited to Los Olivos?
Yeah,
Limited.
we would
Limited.
we would increase the trips along Mission Drive and reduce the trips out to Los Olivos.
Okay.
Yeah, and one thing to clarify, those are really great questions. One thing to clarify, federal and state law requires that we provide the ADA service that matches our fixed route service. So the operating hours and everything have to be the same. We're not required to provide rides to senior citizens at all. That's
where I was going with that,
Yeah.
because I didn't know if you were putting them in the same category with the American with Disabilities Act.
Yeah, we're not, no, yeah, and we're not required. The reason why it's sort of evolved to do that is we have these buses, and of course in a rural community, you don't have generally a high population of disabled people because of the other difficulties of getting public services and transportation and everything. So the buses would sit idle for many hours throughout the day, and so that was even more inefficient. So we felt like, okay, we can provide rides to senior citizens, and actually because of the demographics of San Ynez Valley, there's an increasing senior population. So it just made sense to make use of those buses and offer that service to the community, although it's not required by federal or state law.
One of the things I see in this study was Appendix G, what the driver's survey was. You put the questionnaire in there, but you didn't put a result of the survey. I consider those drivers probably the most knowledgeable about the business on a day-to-day basis. They indicated different bus stops. They also indicated different vehicles. And that's my question. Is there an opportunity to change out the type of vehicles we're using, those large buses, for something like a larger van because of the ridership on each of those big buses?
Yeah, that's a really good question. We've actually considered that a couple times in the last several years, and basically we're trying to balance maintaining the fleet operational, the necessary fleet operational when we have to take some vehicles in for service periodically, and occasionally the vehicle is in an accident or something like that, or has an unexpected breakdown, and then so we might end up with two vehicles being serviced at the same time. And so we felt that from an operational perspective, it was best to have all the vehicles exactly the same so that anyone could fill the need. So we did look at the smaller vans. We could save a little bit of money. The smaller vans actually, I mean, we're paying right now about $70,000 for our cutaway transit buses, including the special wrap on them, the artwork. But like a van, ADA accessible van, is like $50,000 to $55,000, to fully equipped and everything. So it's not that much difference in cost. Now the drivers, we used to have one cutaway that was smaller, and they liked it because when they pull up, they hit branches less, tree branches, and it's just a little bit easier to maneuver and stuff when they're coming to somebody's home. Our bus stops are on the more main roads, so it's easy to pull in and out. But sometimes if you go to somebody's home, if they're on a cul-de-sac or something like that, it's a little bit harder to maneuver in there. And so for them, they like the convenience of having a smaller bus when they're doing the dollar ride service. But from an operational perspective, it just would pose a lot of other complications for us. So.
One of my duties, one of the committees I'm on is SBCAG. I'm also the board member for the CalVans part of SBCAG, the county part. And I called them today and asked them about them providing van service on a van pool basis. They said that as a transit organization, they can do that. And I asked them if it would be possible to have a rate, or could we have a mileage rate, somewhat like a van pool would be. And so my question really is, would a large van, and they agreed that they could put bicycle racks, they could put wheelchair racks on those vans. They have like 900 of them they're using all over the state now. And so they're a pretty viable organization. So my question to them was, they would consider somebody from the city discussing with them the possibility of going to a van pool arrangement rather than having these large buses that have only 2 or 3 people in them that travel all over the city. So I'm wondering if that could be a possibility.
Yeah, oh yeah, certainly. In Santa Barbara, the Metropolitan Transit District, they have a contractual arrangement with Easy Lift, which is basically disabled passenger service.
Right.
And so we could even expand with Easy Lift or with Smooth from Santa Maria to come to San Ynez Valley and do something like that as well.
As you know, there's an effort underway to combine the transit authorities within the North Valley, North County, I mean. Is that going to have any impact on this transit plan that you're talking about?
Yeah, that would. But I think something like that, it'll take a few years to kind of get everything organized and make incremental changes to the whole system. So this is something we feel needs to be implemented fairly soon. But yeah, certainly in 5 years, you know, in 2022, with the next short-range transit plan, if between now and then there was a merged or North County Transit Agency, they would be looking at this all over again and looking at the whole regional needs and connections from San Ynez Valley like we have now, the Breeze 100 and Breeze 200 service to Santa Maria and the Wine Country Express to Lompoc and all that.
I would like to see you investigate the possibility of using Cal vans for vehicles and for vehicle rental or use, because the cost there could be dramatically less. And
just to clarify, they wouldn't be providing the drivers?
No, you would have to provide the driver.
You'd
have to provide the driver.
Okay, sure, we could totally look at that.
And they have 15 passenger vans. They have 9 passenger vans, and they charge a depreciated rate or a prorated rate on the vehicle. If it's a used vehicle, it's cheaper. If it's a brand new one, of course, it's more expensive. And they have the agriculture. They have two divisions: an agriculture division and a commuter division. The agriculture division burn out the vans in rapidly by about 200,000 miles. The commuters use them over 300,000 miles before they sell them off. So and running around in this area, the lifetime of these things ought to be really good. So I would like you to investigate that possibility to replace the bus vehicles we have with these large vans.
But you're specifically talking about for the dollar ride service.
For your line service also. How many passengers do you run up and down the road? Yeah, it says there's six passengers is the average bus load.
Well,
so, and a 9-passenger van or a 15-passenger van?
The cutaway buses that we have right now hold 16 passengers seated,
right,
plus room for passengers standing, plus 2 wheelchairs in the back.
And then how full are they in use?
Well, not very full, yeah.
Exactly.
But sometimes they are. Occasionally they are pretty full.
Well, sure.
I mean, more than 6 passengers.
Right. And if that to me that's a good reason, but it can be fulfilled another way. If 70 or 80% of your passenger trips are non-loaded vans or 1 or 2 people, it's a better choice to go to a smaller vehicle.
If I could say something about capacity on transit vehicles. We have to plan for our largest capacity load. And if you think about it with a shopping mall, they think about Black Friday when they're thinking about their parking lots. They want to have enough parking capacity for their maximum day of the year. And so in transit, we have to think about what's our maximum. And so if we have, for example, you have some places where the school pickup may be a very full bus, and how would we handle that with a smaller vehicle? And so those are the kinds of considerations we have to have when it comes to capacity. Also, if we're looking to attract more casual riders, tourists, there may be an issue with them not feeling comfortable getting on a van, where they might feel more comfortable getting on a bus. And so these are, I mean, we'll certainly look at it.
Well, you know,
But these are some of the
one
considerations.
along those same lines, one of the things I noticed about here is you were trying to save money,
Mhm.
and I think it's at the detriment to passenger service. You're bypassing stops. You're reducing the number of trips to certain areas of the valley. It's an inconvenience to the passengers that already are anticipating that. So I think that and you know, we deal with SBCAG with unmet transportation services.
Yeah, unmet transit needs. Yeah.
Unmet transit needs, and I'm afraid that if we start eliminating stops or reducing service times, that we're going to be getting a pushback on that area. And it's all in the idea of saving money, is to take the service away from some people, which I'm a little bit concerned about.
Sure. I mean, whatever the city council decides, it's totally up to you, and we'll do our best to implement whatever you decide. But you have to realize the reason why we're recommending this is the Ballard, Los Olivos, and everything north, pretty much of Highway 246. It's basically economically dragging down the entire rest of the service. So it doesn't make sense to provide lots of service with no customers out there and spending all this money, and then where we have the customers, limiting the service. So
I agree with that. So that's the opportunity for reduced size vehicles, where costs are down.
well, we want, the other thing, you know, I didn't really get into this, but you've made many comments over the last 2 years about traffic on Mission Drive and everything. So what we're trying to do is get people out of their cars and into the transit and reduce traffic.
Gonna happen. I'm sorry. With the casino, that ain't gonna happen.
well, with the casino, no, but maybe not. But we do actually take 100 cars per day off of the road.
Mm-hmm.
So we're doing something.
Yeah, I mean, the study is really complex and detailed. That's why I feel like that there's going to be a lot of discussion on it. You know?
Sure, I think the smaller vehicles for the dial ride service is a great opportunity for something like that. I think we're kind of shooting ourselves in the foot if we go with smaller vehicles for the normal fixed route service, because we're trying. If you are there waiting at the bus stop and the van pulls up and it can only seat 6 people, you know, and people are getting in, have to duck all in and everything, you know. I mean, the transit buses, they're super comfortable. I don't know if you've ever ridden them. I have many times. They're very comfortable seating. It's a very comfortable ride. We've tried to put out a challenge to all the groups that we met with, saying, hey, just try it twice in 2017. See what it's like. It's really nice. And so we don't want to discourage, you know, ridership. And, you know, when the bus is all full and it's all, you know, people like to be able to go and kind of choose their seat. And
that's big city stuff, yeah.
Yeah, well, anyway, we want to be able to grow and expand that service. And there's the environmental benefits and traffic benefits and all those other things as well that we haven't really touched on tonight. But whatever you decide, that's fine. So the 2 main things we would like your action on is to accept the study and then provide us with direction on which option you'd like us to implement. And like Kathy and I have mentioned, with option 1A or 1B, 1B is the one we're really recommending. That can be phased in. We implement the first service changes, and then within 6 to 12 months after that, implement the second half of that.
So after reading the study, I don't think I'm off base here. 1B is included in scenario 4. Is that close? Yes. Okay. And then I'm not a transportation expert, so I'm not going to micromanage your position, but so you all are highly recommending option 1B, which is also, to me, looks like scenario 4.
Right. We didn't use the scenario numbers from the report for ease of understanding. We just called them option 1, 2, and 3. And so if you're looking in the report itself, option 1B is actually a combination of scenario 4 and scenario 11.
Okay.
Matt, did you have something to say?
As long as the council's done,
Whatever is convenient for you all.
Is there any other questions of the staff report? With that, then we'll go to the public.
So good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. My name is Matt Daubertine. I'm with Santa Barbara County Public Works, and I'm one of the 3 funding partners that helps provide Santa Ynez Valley Transit. It's been great working with Solvang and Buellton to provide this service. We've been really grateful for your Public Works Director's leadership in helping guide this process. And I think it's been a good example of 3 entities coming together and doing regional governance in this area to provide a service. We also wanted to say thank you to Moore & Associates. They have been great to work with and very thorough in the analysis of the various options for your service. When I originally looked at the report and saw the 12 different options, it was pretty mind-blowing. And so the funding partners came together and had a working session and really tried to dive in deep as to what were we trying to accomplish with each of the options and what were the problems that we were trying to fix associated with the service. And so I've been with County Public Works for 14 years, and so I've been watching the development of the service for over a decade now. I've watched during the good times, and I've watched during the lean times now. And the problems that this service is facing are not unique. I think as was mentioned in the presentation, nationwide transit services are facing a lot of the same problems that we have. And I think I'm excited about diving into this. I'm excited about supporting option 1B. And I think it's time to try something different out there. And it's time to sort of modernize and update the service to address problems associated with both cost and efficiency. And so kind of taking the fixed route part of it first, I think it personally makes a lot of sense to run the service where your ridership is. We've been trying various configurations to serve Los Olivos in that area. While the county is taking a hit to service, I think it's important that the ridership, that we target the service where the ridership is, and that I'm satisfied that the community of Los Olivos isn't going to be isolated, because we do have trips throughout the day that will continue to connect that community. And I'm sure if adjustments need to be made in the future as far as retiming when those routes are going out to Los Olivos, we can monitor the service and make those adjustments. I hear you with the casino traffic, it's the real deal, but the fact remains is we are putting public transit on the roadway that has the largest congestion problems, and that to me is a good, sensible strategy. So that's sort of what directed a lot of the fixed route changes that we were trying to make. And then for the dial-a-ride, the policy that's in place where you're providing service for seniors and ADA, the seniors part, it's compassionate, but it's expensive. But I'm in support of wanting to continue that. So the question is how to do that best, how to do it most efficiently. And so when you have an ADA-equipped full-size bus showing up for every single one of these trips, including the seniors that don't need a wheelchair-equipped bus, it's the chainsaw when a butter knife will do, right? And so you've got a fair amount of dial-ride passengers. I think using roughly 40 to 42,000 annual trips is what your service provides. About 6,000 or 15% of your system is dial-a-ride. And so that's a lot of trips. And so if you can look at cost-cutting measures and a more efficient style of transportation, there's a big chunk of trips out there that you can really address. So Matt gave you some costs. You can do this trip with a cab, with an Uber for about half the cost. It also gives the seniors greater flexibility. Your dial-a-ride service is not as flexible because it may get booked up throughout the day. But if a cab shows up at a senior's house and they change their mind and say, hey, I was going to go to this appointment, but I really need to stop at a pharmacy first, a cab has that kind of nimbleness that your dial-a-ride service does not. So I think there's benefits that we can help educate the population about as they kind of get used to the new service. The world of transportation is completely changing, and Matt alluded to a presentation that we saw recently. But when you start to look at the world of advances in automated vehicles and software, ride share and bicycle sharing and all of the things that are starting to change. There's a lot of talk in the transportation world, not just transit, but in the transportation world about using better tools and using the whole range of tools in your toolbox to provide these trips. And in some cases, it is the free lunch. You get
Ignore that.
Sure. You get better cost efficiencies, and you get a more flexible, nimble ride. So I think key, particularly on the dial ride service, is we need to be careful about how we manage this and about how we roll out the service, and also that we do a really good public relations campaign and a public education campaign so that your riders fully understand the system and the benefits associated with it. So thank you, and again, it's a real pleasure working with the city on this system.
I had a question regarding taxi service. Would the dial-a-ride taxi service would allow it multiple stops?
Yes, sir.
For the $1.75, and the taxi would wait for the guy to get out of go shopping, and he'd wait to come back?
That is our understanding from other jurisdictions. It may not allow a half a dozen stops, but I think there is some flexibility in terms of some last-minute changes that could be made on the part of the senior with very short notice.
I see abuse. I'm sorry.
There are details that we have not yet worked out on, and we need to come back and really go into that. The fortunate thing is we are not putting up our service as the guinea pig for something like this. There are very large jurisdictions who have worked out some details, and we're in touch with those, and we're going to learn about what sort of management challenges they confronted and how to really tune this thing up for a rural environment. I've been at transit conferences recently where, like in the last 5 years, as you had the development of Uber and Lyft, transit managers were flipping out. They were really concerned about the loss of ridership and the challenges to meeting their fare box because this new, very nimble, very flexible rideshare apparatus was coming along. Then you had transit managers just a couple years ago stand up and say, this is the best thing that ever happened in my jurisdiction. I am now servicing areas in the rural areas that I never would have provided fixed route transit to because it's so expensive. And yet, people who are residents in my jurisdiction now have access to transportation and they have freedom to go where they want to go, and that's a good thing. So it's changing rapidly, but I think there's some tools that could really be very advantageous for this region.
Thank you, Matt. Very well said.
Thank you. I appreciate your time.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak at this time? Seeing none, let's bring it back to the council for discussion. Who would like to start?
Well, I'd like to know what scenario 3, what's like the reality of that is in the severity of it. It says no, eliminate fixed route service, and like, what does it really mean? 'Cause I can't help myself but to look at $250,000 and.
Right. The reason we included it is because it's just so much of a decrease in operating costs. But what that means is that everybody who rides SYVT is going to have to make a reservation. They're going to have to call in advance or hope that there's an available seat. And it's not real conducive to tourists who would like to use the system. I mean, with a fixed route bus, you can just it pulls up, you get on. With the dial-a-ride, you have to plan ahead.
And that's the thing is, what's the reality on the tourist using the bus? I mean, if I'm a tourist, I'll tell you straight up, I'm going right to Lyft, and I'm just going to pay it. I mean, I'm not going to depend on.
And we don't have a huge tourist population that currently rides, but you know there are people that do ride the fixed route that they may not want to make that transition to dial-a-ride. So we do expect there would be some ridership loss, but the cost for general public dial-a-ride fare is also higher than fixed route, so it's going to offset it somewhat. It just makes it a little more complicated to use.
Right.
Yeah, I just thought I would add, you are correct. I mean, generally the tourists that come here, they drive here and they have their car available. They want to go wine tasting on Santa Rosa Road or Fox and Canyon Road, and they take off in the morning and they come back in the evening for dinner. You know, so we're not really anticipating huge draw of tourist riding. With the hotel partner pass-through concept, the main thing was having the tourists basically help subsidize the transit, but they would at least get something in exchange for that. Would be a free pass on the transit, whether they use it or not. But the other thing is, with option 3, we would expect a significant drop in ridership, and part of our mission in running the San Jose Valley Transit is to try to expand it, get more vehicles off the road, reduce carbon emissions and all that, and try to expand the service to the community rather than cut it back. So, but it was in there because of the tremendous cost savings that it could have.
Yeah, the hotel pass-through. The T-bid people that ask for increases periodically, are going to be impacted by a 25 or 50 cent a day that they have to overcome too. And I'm wondering if you've consulted with the Hotel Association or others to see what their reaction would be to this hotel pass-through.
Sure,
they might see it as a benefit. That's what I'm trying to say.
Well, let me just say, the City of Solvang staff in general, and I know myself, I try to be very cautious about presenting information to other organizations without at least first presenting it to you as our City Council. I don't want you to find out about this idea from somebody else, and then you say, hey, Matt, what the heck, I mean, I never heard of this, and you're talking to all these other people, and we don't even know what's going on. And so I try to be really cognizant of that. And for this in particular, we knew it might be, what's the word I'm looking for? Controversial, thank you. So we're presenting the idea to you, trying to explain and answer your questions about it. If you don't like it, that's fine. We don't recommend that we implement it right away, but if you do like it or you think we should explore it a little further, then you can direct us to bring it back next year. We'll research it more. We'll talk to the different organizations. We'll talk to more of the hotels, and we'll get some feedback, and we can bring that back to you. But I didn't want to, the staff didn't want to go talking to a bunch of people without you first having the opportunity to hear it and give us
Is the hotel
direction.
pass-through available for all options? Is that what you're suggesting?
It is. So the idea is we would implement some service change and then see how that affects our costs. Hopefully the costs will drop, and hopefully it will increase ridership, and then we'll see where we're at and basically take baby steps in making changes. And if we feel like, well, okay, we've reduced costs, we've increased ridership, but we still have, the gap hasn't closed enough, then we'll come back to you with the option of the hotel partner pass-through or a fare increase, or possibly some other adjustment.
Is there ever a time when the route, say one way or the other, where it's completely vacant and no one's on the bus, but they have to go to the stop to pick up who potentially is?
Yeah.
And how often? What are those statistics?
We haven't actually. I would just from my own observation, I would say probably 10% of the time the bus is driving around empty.
10%.
Yeah.
The statistics are in here by the hour, the number of boardings.
Yeah. So.
I'm sorry, did you say 50% or?
10%.
Oh, 10%, okay.
Well, I think that what I didn't see in here was discussion involving Adderdag, senior living community, because they have their vans that service the seniors and then take them places on demand and organized events. So if your concern regarding senior citizens and finding another company to work with specifically for that, so it's not a dial-a-ride, you might want to take a look at that I don't know if anyone spoke with Chris Parker at Atterdag or has been up there to see how they organize their transportation for their seniors as well.
Yeah, certainly we
Because
can do
that's
that.
a huge population of seniors in Solvang, and I think it's different than a town like Santa Barbara, because Santa Barbara is so big and they have so many different senior living communities. We've got primarily one, Atterdag, but we also have other facilities, but they probably aren't facilities where they'll be taking buses. But now you've also got Rona Barrett's place, Golden Inn.
Yeah, the Golden Inn
So,
Village.
and
Sure, we can talk to them.
Yeah.
I do know that we have several dial-a-ride customers from Atterdag Village and Golden Inn Village. So even with the services they do provide, there's still a need.
well, they might be doing dial-a-ride for a reason, and I don't know why, because they can ask their administrators in the offices to take them places. So there's a reason they're using dial-a-ride.
Yeah, no, that's a great suggestion. I'll make a note of that, and we'll talk to them.
When they do dial-a-ride, do they actually take them to the door?
Yeah, well, we call it curb to curb.
Okay.
So they'll pull up in front of the house or in front of the business or whatever, and then and they'll drop them off as close as they can to the front door of their destination.
So they do, like at Rona's place, they will take them into the complex and take them to their apartments?
They would drive in there, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, so the very back west east side of that, it might be kind of difficult for them to drive in and turn around and stuff. I'm not exactly familiar with the circulation in there, but they would definitely drive in. There is kind of a turnaround actually for the purpose of shuttles and stuff, kind of in towards the front, but it's off of Refugio Road. So, yeah.
Thank you.
So you want us to approve the study and give you direction?
For the
Okay,
service.
so I'd like to make a motion that we accept the study.
Perfect, thank you.
I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
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 Now, as to direction, have you heard us? We want, at least for me, want to look at the,
There wasn't,
hotel-
one single consensus from all the discussion
Yeah.
that I could
There
discern.
are a lot of numbers and letters.
right.
So the main things I've heard are investigate the use of the smaller Calvan vans, particularly for the dial-a-ride service. I would say that is more feasible. And then to talk to Golden Inn Village and Atterdag Village a little bit more, find out more details about their own shuttle service and how that meshes with our dial-a-ride service.
Okay, Golden Inn doesn't have any service at all
Okay.
at this point in time. It's just Atterdag Village.
So
And
then
that's why I asked about that, because I've seen people take the normal bus and it stops there at the corner of 246 and Refugio Road.
Right, right.
And you see these little people pushing their, what do you call those
Walkers.
things? They're walkers. How soon I forgot. They're walkers across Refugio and then
Right.
down not a sidewalk, but a gravelly pathway. And then they have to go all the way back into wherever they're living. And I mean, it's an undertaking.
Well, maybe we need to do some more marketing with them, just
Maybe
to
so.
educate them on the
Maybe so.
dial-a-ride service.
Yeah.
Because it's only 25 cents more.
I know.
But, yeah, so it's a
And
little
I'm
more.
sure at Atterdag, the reason that you have the citizens there using the dial-a-ride is because it's probably less expensive than the shuttle, because the shuttle at Atterdag don't take you everywhere for free. So, and I knew they cost much more than that.
Yeah, that's-
And then the possibility of discussing the hotel bypass or pass-through with the hotels and with the hotel association to find out if the hotels want to cooperate, number one, and number two, if what kind of a pushback the T-bid people would have for the increases.
Just to make sure there's a clarity, the T-bid is actually where the hotels vote to tax themselves. What this concept is the residents of Solvang would vote to institute this tax to be put upon people who transiently stay in the hotels.
Oh,
Just that it is a different operation.
You're saying we're going to have to put something like this on the ballot?
Correct.
Yes.
That's, did it say that?
Yeah, I'm sorry I didn't clarify that. I apologize. Yeah, so it would, but again, it wouldn't cost the businesses anything or the residents, because it's all 100% paid.
Yeah, I understand that portion. That's the way the T-bid works, too.
It might be smarter to give direction, and then if you like the idea of doing some kind of tax on it, that you pursue that separately as something that comes back.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
right.
what.
Yeah,
thank
it
you. That's what
definitely
we're
would have to come
suggesting.
back, yeah.
Thank you.
But I mean, like, make a decision today to start going down one of these paths, and then investigating the additional tax, because that's kind of the.
Yeah, it would be separate.
Is there a correlation between what it's costing us and the number of people that are going to have access to the service? But with those options, i.e., if we stay like it is, we're going to have X number of users. If we go to option 2, are we going to reduce that X number of users by a factor of something so that those folks don't get access to the system?
You can, there's the line item for increased ridership. So I think you can assume with the ones that say no,
That means a
that there's going to
decrease.
be a decrease.
Right, we anticipated anything where we're increasing frequency, like with this express route, that would increase ridership, and the dial-a-ride options would likely decrease ridership.
And, I'm thinking of the folks that are off the main line, you know, that have to walk more than 2 or 3 blocks to get to bus service, and they would be the dial-a-ride users. And those folks that are getting bypassed because of new route structures, they're going to be using the dial-a-ride service because they can't get, you know, I see it. I look at that because I know I don't want to ride a bus, you know, and I want the folks that do ride the bus to have all the convenience that they can have, you know.
But wouldn't that option 1 increase the maneuverability and flexibility in more rural areas by using Lyft, Uber?
Yeah, 1B. Well, yeah, that's a good point. So, Mayor, to answer your question a little bit, so the idea is with the option 1 part and this adjusting the fixed route to be an express route, the idea is right now we believe there are many potential passengers that don't use the bus because the headway is too long, the buses come too infrequently, and so we're going to increase so basically what it'll be is every half an hour a bus will come by the bus stop. And so, you know, of course, traffic sometimes
that's
affects
a
it a
lot
little
better.
bit,
Yeah.
but basically you can count every half hour, there's going to be a bus taking you this way or that way.
That's terrific.
Where you want to go. And so we think with that better schedule and going to the destinations that are most heavily already traveled, or that, you know, already have the most passengers going to those locations, we're going to increase the ridership because there's potential riders that right now we're not able to accommodate, or our schedule doesn't accommodate. So, and by making that adjustment, we think we're going to attract more customers.
And then the B option on 1?
Yeah, so we would implement that. We'd first adjust the fixed route service and the schedule and everything to be this express route. And then over a 6 to 12-month period, we'd investigate contracts with the local taxi cab companies and with Uber and Lyft. And then we would, you know, get all of our questions answered and come back to you and say, okay, this is how this would work. Do you want to sign the contract with them and proceed or not? Because
So
we'd have to have an agreement, which you would have to approve. So
we could, if we get unfavorable report on B, then we can go look at another option at that time?
yeah, we could do the A part, which basically A is option 1A is actually options 1 and 2 combined, because the A part is the Saturday dial-a-ride service. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Can I make a motion?
If everybody's satisfied so far.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion to direct to go ahead and explore option 1B, which is scenario 4. Start down that path.
To implement it.
To implement,
Okay,
yes.
perfect. Thank you.
Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. Will you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Waite,
Yes.
Jameson,
Yes.
Toussaint,
Yes.
Zimmerman.
One question, was this a 6 to 12-month trial and we're gonna assess it, or is this just go with this for now and then come back later at some point maybe?
We would do this scenario 4,
Yep.
which is option 1.
Yep.
And then over the next 6 to 12 months, we would research how the agreements would work and how, try to get answers to all the questions on how it would actually work.
Yep.
Come back to you to present those agreements and all the conditions
All right,
for
let's
your
do it.
approval.
That's a yes.
Mayor Richardson.
Yes. That passes with a 5-0.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for putting up with us.
Oh, no, I
Or,
knew you'd
I
have
mean,
lots of questions.
Putting up with
it's-
me.
it's- yeah.
Thank you, Matt, for being here, too. Great presentation.
All right,
And
great. Thank you very
Kathy.
much.
Yeah. The next item is council member reports. Are there any council member reports?
I don't have a library report, but I think Brad could maybe share something that may have happened today at the library meeting with the county.
Yeah, well, there was a meeting today in Zone 1, city managers, finance directors, and the county and the city of Santa Barbara to pass on not much new information on the library funding. It's quite a bit into unknown because Goleta has moved forward with separating from Zone 1, but there's an issue of how much per capita goes with that, how much per capita stays. And there was an issue about the black gold fee and how that's going to be split. So I don't really have much to report. It was really, they said we're not going to have any new information for a while. They did say that they intend to hold the overhead fee at 13.5 for the next fiscal year. They're going to maintain that. That was the only positive out of the meeting, really. But yeah, so yeah, there's still a lot of unknowns. The consultant, I think at the Board of Supervisors meeting next week, I think they're going to approve the contract for the consultant to start the work on the countywide assessment of how they do the per capita and things. So that consultant contract is coming forward. And as part of that, you may recall the Board of Supervisors approved another $180,000 during their budget to go towards maintaining libraries, hours and things. Originally, Solvang was allocated, I think, $13.5 out of that, the library to purchase a self-check machine and a new printer. Because the consultant's contract came in higher than anticipated, they're going to only allocate $5,000 to the printer for the Solvang library. So the other $8 would go towards helping pay for the consultant. So I think that was a summary of the meeting that we got out of that. So.
And what I found interesting was that in the stats that they sent to us on Friday, I think it was, Carpinteria still gets their $75,000 from the $180,000. And I'm trying to figure out who else got a lesser amount. Solvang got the lesser amount by far.
We got to buy a printer.
Yeah, maybe.
Is there anything with the
printer, but
CSD? Anything with the Community Service District on St. As and anything? What's going on with that?
I don't
updates on
think
that?
there's been another meeting.
There hasn't been
since-
another meeting since we gave our report about the wastewater
All right.
and recycling situation.
Yep.
But the word is getting out there where they want to put their facilities, and people are not very happy.
Gotcha.
Before we go into closed session, this will be the last public performance from our current legal arm, Roy Hanley, and I want to express my thank you for your service to us. I think you've done a wonderful job. You've kept us out of trouble. You kept me out of trouble in particular over and over and over again, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate it. And we're going to miss you. At least I am, anyhow. So and I want to thank you publicly for serving us. And we're looking forward to David. I'm sure he'll do almost as good a job as you, maybe better. So thank you again, Roy. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Roy.
Is this your last meeting, Roy?
Yes.
No, what? All right.
You can see him at the planning commission, though.
Okay. All right.
I'm just fading away.
Okay, would you read the closed session item, please?
Item 15, closed session, Government Code Section 54957.6, conference with labor negotiators, agency representatives, Brad Vidro, city manager, and Dave Fleischman, assistant city attorney, employee organization Teamsters Local 986.
We're adjourned to closed session.